you saw Kush Groove, you saw us, you saw us smoking. You like, I get that. You know what I'm saying? Like the message was clear. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what we actually do really well. Like we're not artists, we're not graphic designers, we're not the most creative people. I think what we really do well is like bring community together. You know what I'm saying? For this specific purpose.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Yours, Mine, and Ours. I'm your host, Joel Edwards of the Moonlighters Club, and we're back with the Ujima project. And first, let me give a shout out to the videographer, Colgan, who's been doing an amazing job for us. Colgan has just been great at setting up visuals. So if this looks great, I have nothing to do with it. It's all Colgan. I just kind of come here and I'm told what to do. So yo, Colgan, thank you. I appreciate it. We're in another great space. We have another great guest. Marcus, what's going on?
How you doing, my brother?
Doing all right. We're at Kush Groove, or soon to be Kush Groove. I'm excited. Actually, we talked about this before. I knew about Kush Groove when I was years ago looking for people to interview from the Moonlighters Club. And I just walked into your shop, saw everything in Mission Hill.
Yes, sir.
And I've lived in Boston for a very long time. If you knew Mission Hill, like how I knew Mission Hill, when we were kids, it was a place you weren't supposed to go, and then going there to see, you know what I mean? Like a cannabis retail store and black owned, it was pretty dope. So however it may have happened, Faith, we're here now. We're interviewing you now. Super pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting us into your space.
You're welcome.
Shout out to the Ujima Project for setting this up. Where are you from?
Interestingly enough, I'm from this neighborhood in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where our dispensary is at. I don't know which camera's gonna see this. We're at 701 Marama Street in Cambridge, Mass. 02138, right next to the Star Market. Grew up in this neighborhood, Cambridge, Mass, man.
Was it always going to be Boston? When you were talking about starting a business, were you ever like, it could happen anywhere, or were you, no, if I do anything, let's start it here. Okay, Boston, Cambridge, excuse me. Let's start it here, and then I'll just see what I do later on.
For me, being in business was never about a place or a space. It was just something I needed to do, an activity. Like I needed to be doing something entrepreneurial. How I fell into cannabis, I think it was just circumstantial. Having had a retail location in Boston that I started right after college. Literally, I went to Northeastern. Our Kush Groove Mission Hill location's a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yep.
Stone's throw away from Northeastern. So it wasn't too far from us, from just where I was at, to open a business, you know, where I was at. This location specifically came out of a pursuit to open a cannabis dispensary in a decent location, right?
Yeah.
Like as a business person, you think about location, right? That's like kind of what you think about. And we were scouting locations, scouting available locations, scouting, and this is specific to cannabis, scouting locations that were in compliant business commercial zones. And this location just happened to be one of those locations. And it also happened to be the location in the neighborhood that myself and my business partner grew up in.
That's awesome. When you were in school, did school contribute to this? To give an example, school is probably the reason why entrepreneurship caught my ear, and like it did a good job of kind of pointing me towards like figuring out how to ask questions, figuring out solutions. It was good for me with that. For you, did school serve as a catalyst to helping you start this business? And if so, I'm curious, because I had friends who were in school who were like, man, I'm just trying to get this degree. And they were like a totally different person outside of school. They were trying their own thing, doing it, and they held it as two separate lives. But I've also seen people kind of use that experience to be a catalyst, to help them start a business. So what was that like for you?
Well, the catalyst to be an entrepreneur was definitely outside of school. It was definitely molded by, I think, this unique time in hip hop where we saw hip hop culture, where we saw rappers as CEOs, right? So like that was an education on its own, right in your face, to see a Master P, to see a Jay-Z, to see a 50 Cent, and they're telling you this story through the music, and then you're also watching the story through the visuals, right? So for me, that was the catalyst outside of school. In college at Northeastern, my business partner, he graduated with a degree in business. So, if you asked him this question, he could probably answer it differently. But I kind of just holding on to the pigtails of his interest in business at the academic level and just the pursuit to be an entrepreneur. You know what I'm saying? That's where the catalyst came from. I was never really urged to do this or to be an entrepreneur in college on my own.
Yeah.
I'm actually more of an academic, like an intellectual.
Yeah.
But just being around my brother and my friend who was in the College of Business.
Yeah.
And then kind of like, oh, they got, accelerator programs over there and this, that, like that kind of opened that door to like entrepreneurship from that perspective. I was just excited about being an entrepreneur because I'm like, I just like how Master P move. I like how 50 Cent move. I like how Jay-Z move. I'm like, as black men, I like how they move.
Yeah.
So I in it, not beyond the music, right? Like I liked rap. I didn't want to really be a rapper, but I like the results of what they was doing. So I was like, oh, I think I want to go do whatever they're doing. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where that catalyst came from.
Yeah, I feel like you have to find the right way to intersect it, because there's times where I'm reading too much. Like, school will give you certain tools, and then you can just find yourself overanalyzing and like overreading and overplanning. And in its defense, it's not always good to just run out and do stuff. Like there's not, like if you don't have a lot of money, the entrepreneurs are like, man, it was my last $10 and I just went out there. Like that's not always the best. It works sometimes, but no, you have to find a way to marry the both. And it seems like you've done a good job. Now I know a lot about your business, but do you mind explaining what Kush Groove is?
Well, I think this bleeds into what you were getting at, right? You kind of start with what you got, right? So 2010-ish, myself, my partner Mike, our other friend that we kind of started this with, our day-to-day was working our half corporate jobs, year or 2 or 3 out of college, each of us. Coming home, we indulged in cannabis all the time.
It sounded so regal. I like the way you indulge in cannabis. Like that. That's it.
You learn some key words over the time, bro. But nonetheless, we come out of work every day and we're just like, man, we want to do something more. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, speaking to myself, there was no other path I saw to do more other than entrepreneurship, other than to create some, right? Like I actually started grad school just because my mother worked at Northeastern and I had like a free benefit up until I was 26 years old. Yeah. So I'm like 25, I'm like, let me just go get these free classes, you know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, like I didn't have a career path, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't think about a career path, or I didn't know of a career path. There was or a career path that excited me, frankly. There wasn't anybody in my life that elder I saw that had a career like I could model after, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is no disrespect to some of my elders that I love, that took on more public sector jobs, but that didn't excite me, you know what I'm saying? I got excited by like entrepreneurship. And so that was the only pathway I saw. And so, bringing it back to my partners and I at the time, just figuring out like, what can we do? We just went through this exercise of like, let's start something. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that is, I don't know what it is. Let's start something. But we went through this exercise, played with a couple different ideas, and we landed on t-shirts and clothes because we did that in high school.
Okay.
10 years before at that point, we had made some t-shirts for just like our little neighborhood because West Cambridge, or in Cambridge, we have neighborhoods. Yeah. This representation, right? So, it was like our little crew of maybe like 15, 20 of us. We all had our little t-shirts and we like had our little thing on the front, a name on the front. We had our name, all of our names on the back. So it's like all of our crew on the back.
Nice.
So you're just in high school, you know, with your crew name and then all your crew on the back. You know what I'm saying? That was a cool thing, but we knew how to do that. Like that was the lowest hanging fruit, you know, 11 years ago at this point. So we were like, all right, let's do some t-shirt stuff, recognizing like the angle got to be about cannabis. In addition to that, my other partner, Mike, he had lived in California for like 6 months after college. And I went and followed him too. And from him going there and me going there, you can kind of see there was like a cannabis culture, you know what I'm saying? Of like merchandise and accessories and, you know, things of that nature, you know what I'm saying? Like that stuff was there, you know what I mean? And just being there and then coming back like, what can we do? We're like, we got to do something like that. Whatever's happening in the West Coast, we got to do that here. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of really what got the business model going. And then as we were thinking about a name, Kush Groove kind of just came to mind as just, you know, in conversation, maybe we happened to just hear some music at that time. We were just kind of like going through this exercise. Kush Groove came up, and then it was like, yo, what if we took off the R and made that Kush Groove? And it was like, yo, that sounds dope. You know what I'm saying? It was like one of them, like, you know, when you just in that creative space, right? And you're like, yeah. So however that like came up, it just stuck. And then, you know, we kind of conceptualized it around the fact that Kush Groove was a movie that introduced hip hop culture as like a pop culture. You know what I'm saying? And we feel like Kush Groove, the name, to some degree represents this introduction to cannabis as another pop culture, right?
Okay.
So that's how we interpret the meaning, right? Someone else, you ain't got to believe us, but whatever, right? Like that's how we interpret it. So that was, you know, the business model kind of came about, and then the name, and then we were like, all right, let's run with it. Nice. So that's where it came from.
See, if I'm 39, if like for folks watching, if you happen to be whoever it is, this is why Black folks take hip hop so seriously. It's like you have no idea of realizing how much it means to us. Like when we were
it really does.
When we were young, it was like everything that was happening, the music, everything, the graffiti, everything around it meant so much to us that like even now it has the names we pick, the people we were influenced by. Like this is like 30 years in the making, bro.
It's interesting. You asked me with the assumption that the catalyst to be a business or be a business person came from school, and like, nah, it came from hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like that's it. All of this really came from hip hop. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that's wild. Walk me through getting that first store, because we've been fortunate to talk to people who have brick and mortars, and like people who are doing stuff within that. But it's just something I can never make tangible for myself. So like starting with the spot in Mission Hill, how do you go from not having a storefront to having a storefront?
Yo, business is such a journey, and it's so unpredictable. And the only predictable thing that you can like predict out of business is like, as long as you stay with it, like things are gonna open up. So we had started the business with like a launch party, and we did the festival, the Hemp Fest. Okay. We did a couple of, there was one in Western Mass. We did like a handful of those. We was doing a whole bunch of like popping up at like hip hop shows in Boston when there was hip hop shows, when there was like local hip hop shows.
Yeah. That used to be a thing.
That used to be a thing, yes. Yeah. So we was just like omnipresent, you know what I'm saying? We was just outside. Like we was the definition of outside everywhere, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And through that, we built community. And we built like representation of like what we was trying to do. Like the people like You saw Kush Groove, you saw us, you saw us smoking. You like, I get that. You know what I'm saying? Like the message was clear. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what we actually do really well. Like we're not artists, we're not graphic designers, we're not the most creative people. I think what we really do well is like bring community together. You know what I'm saying? For this specific purpose. I think that's like our diamond in the rough. So we recognized like we was building community, and it wasn't very calculated. It was more instinctual. It was like, man, we got to get a spot. You know what I'm saying? And at the time, there was this woman. It was during the what's his name? When Menino passed, and what was the other white dude's name? The mayor.
Flint? Not Flint. That was before. Walsh.
Walsh.
Yeah, there we go.
So
yeah.
it was like
I don't know.
It was like that election, that campaign, and there was this woman, Charlotte Golar Ritchie, that was running.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So she was operating out of her campaign was operating out of that location where our store was, and my partner just happened to be like a volunteer in the campaign, so he was going to that space, networking with, all the volunteers of the campaign. And one of the volunteers, or whatever the case, was the landlord to that spot.
Yeah.
So she lost the campaign. The spot became vacant, and it just made sense. Like the rent was affordable. The down payment was affordable.
That's what I can't believe, that the rent in Boston anywhere was affordable.
Well, at that time in Mission Hill, it's not Mission Hill what it is today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it was an older building, right? So like we lucked out.
Yeah,
and in a
good,
relationship
good,
too. Like it just worked out.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the one thing that's predictable about business, is like just you're going to meet people as long as you stay consistent doing like following the path of the business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How you grow from those relationships with those people would determine the growth of your business, right? But that's the only thing that's predictable that I've seen about business and being in business this long, is like the only thing that's predictable is like meeting people, and as long as you're staying doing the business.
Yeah. I never understood that definition of luck, of like preparation meeting opportunity, but it really is that.
Really
like I used to, when I was in an app space, I used to get like just angry, and you're like, how is this happening? How is this happening? But in reality, you just need to operate your business to the best you can. There are walls that do need help. Like sometimes you need policy, sometimes you do need a certain amount of funds, but don't operate waiting for something to happen or for someone to meet you, because you literally could be in day 2 and someone's like, hey, this business you have, I want 1,000 of those.
Yeah.
And now you're like, I have no idea how to make 1,000 of those.
Yeah.
And you fail. Like so like the only way to be ready for those situations, or to even get in those situations, you really just gotta work your business.
Yeah.
Like work it, people notice it. And by the time people are noticing it, you're ready for whatever.
Right.
So, cause that happened, and like there could have been a retail space ready for y'all, and y'all could have been sitting there like, oh, all right, we'll get at you in a year. We'll come back. It'd have been gone. Like you'd have never been able to do it.
Yeah,
so,
dude was like, yo, you want this? It costs this much. We got together like, damn, we got to figure out how we're going to get this $6,000 as first laugh in deposit. We got this. We got that. Damn, it's going to cost a build out, this, that. Damn, it's going to be like 30 racks. All right, man, let's do what we got to do. Let's save this. Let's start with this little. Literally, the first day we opened, it was so bare boned. From like when we closed it, it was all like colorful, the walls, all shelves all built out. But like when we first opened it, there was like 2 glass cases less than what we needed. You know what I'm saying? Like it was so bare boned. But you got started with what you got. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And that's exactly what we did.
People were like, probably thought it was a drug front for like, it was one of those,
Probably, for sure.
So what was it like managing that? So how'd you all split time, hours between who's going to be at the store, who's not? Like, what's it like managing a storefront?
It requires bodies being there. So like you learn that real quick, and then you learn just like scheduling and people and time. Like I was actually like the work I was doing before was very administrative. I was in offices, I was working in nonprofit and foundations, things of that nature. And like, you know, corporate bossing, you know what I'm saying? So I never really worked in retail, honestly. Even as a kid, I didn't work in retail. So having a retail business was like, professionally was like an ill shift.
Yeah.
Owning a retail business was an ill shift. Making sure there's people, again, you know, retail requires bodies.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's just getting people, getting good people, reliable people. And you know, it's a business, right? Like I don't know how to dive in deeper on this.
No, the way you described it kind of speaks to the personality and how you run it. Like there's people I talk to about it, and they're just like, "You gotta be here." Like I think it's the old bitter guy way of like speaking out. It's like the old American adage of how business is supposed to work, and it's always stress. They're like, you can't be here, you gotta be hard on folks, you gotta do this. But I also think your personality can flow into how you run things and how you do things, and it's not always the same for everybody.
Perfect example. I was, you know, don't take this personal if you guys are seeing this at some point. But you know, I had a conversation with two of my friends that own cannabis businesses. One of them has a problem with employee turnover, one of them doesn't. And I know instinctually, because I know them personally, it's personality. Like one just doesn't provide the same level of operational excellence with managing people as the other guy does. The other guy, he's great as a business operator, but he's not great as a people operator the same way the other guy is, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with personality,
yeah,
right? And to your point, I think we've been able to run our business similar to the other example of this guy because of our personality, because of our relationship to the business, our relationship to our workforce. You know, they look like us, right? We kind of have the same interests. Our relationship to the customer, again, I'm if I wasn't doing this, I'd be my own customer, right? So I have the same interests of the customer. And that all ties into the personality of myself, personality of the ethos of the business. And so the personality does 100% of management determine the success of a business. And you know, personality was a big key indicator for our business.
Nice. So that seems to be working really well for y'all.
Yeah.
So now we're in this beautiful spot in Cambridge. We're
West
here.
Cambridge,
Yeah. And I've been in the other shop. There were clothes there. There were accessories there. There's going to be cannabis here.
Yes.
Explain the shift and give us a little foreshadowing of what the store is going to be like when it's ready.
So we pursued this location around 4 years ago once cannabis became legal and once the city of Cambridge, you know, kind of crafted laws for adult use cannabis retail. We've been building out this space for a little under a year now. We're finally getting to a place of being operational for adult use cannabis. We'll have kind of like our merchandise accessories over in that area. You know, the point of sales, you'll kind of get your cannabis over there. But the journey really, and what the shift was from regular retail, clothing, accessories, smoke shop, paraphernalia and such, it was a shift to just a regulated market, right? The first of its own on the East Coast, smack dab in the middle of COVID, right? So you got all these elements creating a brand new industry from the ground up. You got all these elements that dictate the time and the speed it takes to just get a business open, right? Like
Yeah.
if we were an ice cream shop, you know, wouldn't have been an issue. I wouldn't have to get a state license or a city license or all these things. You know what I'm saying? Lobby to change the the commercial zone to allow cannabis. You know, you don't really need all that for like traditional businesses. So with this business in this industry, it took a lot of time for the state, for the local municipality to create a framework that just allowed adult use cannabis to operate and thrive.
Do you just have a lawyer around all the time? Like, I can't even imagine the amount of legislation. And
Nah, we got a couple. And we call them with very specific questions to get very specific responses, so it doesn't cost that much. Now, but all jokes aside, it does require, every element of this requires legal advice. You need corporate attorneys, you need municipal zoning attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the only quote unquote like attorney help you need. You need compliance help, which isn't necessarily like legal, but it's more regulatory. And you kind of need to know how to run a business.
Yeah.
You know, like this isn't a business for like a first time business owner. No. Like, this isn't even like a first time retail business owner. Like, I'm so happy and fortunate I had retail experience in running a retail business. I would have been that much more overwhelmed if I didn't know how to run a retail business, if this was my first retail business. Then, you know, there's the element of finance and fundraising too. Like, this is an expensive operation.
Yeah.
You know, this is not cheap. You need at least, you know, close to $1 million to get one of these things up and running. And you can't really get it from traditional sources. So it's a lot.
I feel like it's not like whenever you talk about business, you're like competitors. I feel like this industry is like, you just need to last. Like, you need to just start and then last and then not have it all explode in your face. Like, that's like, it's just it sounds so, and it can like just turn on a dime. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yes. I mean, we were talking about this off camera about the cashless ATM issue that was literally like just came up this week. And that's going to disrupt, and it has disrupted a lot of businesses already with how they're going to transact card transaction. And I'm sure that was, for most businesses, you know, on average, maybe a third of how they process payments. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you wake up the next day and you're like, I got to figure out a solution to this. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If I was generating, this is a realistic scenario, if I was generating $30,000 a day in business, and 10,000 of that now, I got to figure out how to transact that tomorrow. Yeah. Right? Like,
it's crazy.
That's a real
crazy
challenge that like cannabis businesses encounter often.
That's so crazy. I know y'all do well with it, but it's just, I'm glad that people like yourself are in it, because someone like myself, I'm just going to be on the sideline cheering y'all on.
Well, so interestingly enough, like, again, if I didn't have retail experience, it would have overwhelmed me. In my specific experience, we had to deal with this because we were dealing with the e-juice transactions, the Juul vape transactions, right? When all that stuff was in a gray area with credit card transactors, you know what I'm saying?
I remember when Juul was like the thing, and now it's like you're all
now
going
it's
to jail.
not the thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. You're all going to jail.
It's like, it happened that quick. Like that forced our smoke shop business to pivot. Yeah. Like I mean, the Juul frankly, the jewel business gave us like a good run, a good like 18 months of jewel business kind of gave us the money we needed to get these things going. Like the jewel was a real significant portion of our business. And then they changed the law a week later and you gotta like adapt and survive. And this was our means of adapting.
Yeah. Well, I like the progress you've made. I'm excited for this next phase. Speaking of, you talked about just, the community, bringing people together. How'd you connect with the Boston Ujima Project?
I became familiar with the Ujima Project actually years before, because I was telling you I've been in nonprofit stuff.
Yeah.
So I was familiar with the Ujima Project just in my Boston nonprofit moving and grooving.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think we got more engaged with the project as we, I think any business that has sustained itself in a community, a small business, you try to reach out to different organizations that are doing like-minded work, right? And so for us, it just seemed right to just, again, from myself coming from a nonprofit community-based background, to just like have relationships with these sort of organizations. And I think it was just through that outreach, through that connection, I got that much more familiar with the Ujima Project.
Yeah. It's Ujima does awesome stuff.
Yeah.
It's the concept of just building it up. And the work community is I remember looking at your business practices. I love the waste transparency. I work in a place that does that, and it weirded me out at first. I'm like, yo, we can all see this, But it's
so
super.
I learned this from Scrum training. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Scrum and Agile in the corporate workplace, that training and that model. But I learned that like Scrum trainings and Scrum capacity building kind of encourages pay transparency. You know what I'm saying? And just going through that as an individual, and then also kind of wearing my hat as a business owner, I'm like, wow, that's actually cool, because those questions aren't asked anymore. If you go downstairs and you're like, oh, you see everybody's like salary on the thing, it's like, you don't really have to ask those questions. Or at least if you're curious about those questions, they're already answered, right? It's not like this information is hidden. And I feel like with a lot of businesses, and even as I've gone through this interview process and onboarding people, there's so much information I know coming from the perspective of an owner, a business operator, that I want to share with my employees, because that builds their capacity, it builds their understanding of the business. They become that much more involved and engaged in the business. They can add more value to the business if they understand the business, right? And so that's the ethos that we're trying to have, is just ongoing training, ongoing transparency, ongoing capacity building, because we just want to build our team and build that capacity so we can have an exceptional business. It's not rocket science. That formula is actually pretty understandable. It's pretty logical. You know what I'm saying?
The number one thing that stuck out was community owned. Okay, your business practices, and you have like the ultimate community business. You live like around the corner.
Yeah, live around the corner.
Your business here.
Started business here.
Putting your crew on your back. Who would have known? Who would have thought that with your friends would have led to you doing this with your friends?
Yo, what's even crazier, the Star Market right next door is my best friend's first job.
That's wild.
When he was 14. Right in the back, in the path, this kind of strip of the old train tracks that I used to have back in the day. It's a walking path, bike path now. But that was our smoking spot. Like as kids.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like it don't get any more community than this. You know what I'm saying? Like my mom's gonna work here. Some of my close friends, childhood friends growing up from our neighborhood down the street, they don't work here. Like it really don't get any more community than that.
It doesn't. This is good. This is a great thing, and I'm excited about this. I'm excited about this for you.
Thank you.
When are we expecting
New Year's Eve.
Okay.
We're gonna pop it off New Year's Eve.
I will
go into the new year with
Nice.
this new energy.
That'd be a good way to go into the new year.
Yeah.
Sleep. Sleep by 11. Yeah. I'll have to go in remotely. I got a newborn at the house, so my New Year's will probably just be me and my wife just there kicking it. But I definitely want to see this. I want to come back when you get the turtle, your mascot where I am.
Yeah.
This has been really cool. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet
Thank you.
with us. I got to start smoking weed again. I think that's what we pulled from this conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's wild that the connotation it had. I'm talking to a real, you know what I mean? I'm talking to an actual business owner who's opening up, putting people on through this thing that we thought was the devil.
Yeah. It's really not.
Ago.
It's really not.
No, it's actually creating opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, this is our first of 3 locations, by the way. We have a second one opening in Brockton in about 3-4 months.
Okay.
And we have another one opening in Boston, literally right around the corner from our original Kush Groove shop in Mission Hill. That should be opening probably like June.
Nice. We got to check back in. Logan, we'll check back in. We'll see how things are going.
Yes, sir.
Seriously, Marcus, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Like you've done a lot of good. And I don't know if you ever get the time to just sit back and admire it, but like this is an awesome situation.
Thank you.
And I wish you nothing but the best of success.
Thank you.
So for everyone tuning in, thank you for the Boston Ujima project again. Like the work speaks for itself, from food to jazz to cannabis.
Well, we're in an interesting, unique space because, and I think I have to disclose this.
Oh, please do. I don't want to.
Because Kush Groove, the brand, is owned by Kush Groove Clothing LLC.
Okay.
Which is a company owned by myself and my partner Mike. The cannabis business that we're in the space that we're in, it's a totally separate entity.
Okay, it's a totally different organization.
Totally different organization with different business partners, with myself and my partner as the majority owners. But it's a business that operates in cannabis, and our clothing and accessories business doesn't necessarily operate in cannabis.
Got it.
So I just want to make
Let's get the legal stuff.
That's cannabis.
We're
That's cannabis in America right now, man. It's cannabis in America right now.
But no, this is, I mean, the fact that you're doing that, it's great. And again, shout out to Ujima Project for even setting this up. This has been a great journey. And we've been meeting really exceptional individuals. So, Marcus, again, running 2 big things from the clothes to the cannabis. I salute you.
Thank you.
For everyone, keep tuning in. There have been some really exceptional folks here and doing great things. Stay tuned. And for everyone else out there, we'll see you next time.
Peace.